What's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's good to see you and you again. And all you new faces as well. Once again, we have 3 different bags of chips and we're gonna see if they taste anything like what the packaging says and if it's worth your time to go out there and try it. So with that out of the way, let's go try some snacks. So let's start with the one that was on discount, which is the crispy bacon and maple syrup chips by Kettle, made with love ... Honestly, it looks like they had to fill space and that's why there's so many dots over here. This was clearly meant for Christmas and that's why it's probably on discount, and it's made with Norfolk bacon. Honestly, I have no idea what that is, but I'm gonna assume it's some sort of special bacon. So on the back, it states that it's made from 100% real ingredients, so no gluten, no artificial flavors, no MSG.
Where your MSG? You don't use MSG.
It doesn't really make a huge difference to me because if this tastes good, then it's good. If it doesn't taste good, then it belongs in the bin. I don't really expect too much from this, but I think it should be able to deliver on the flavor because Kettle is a fairly decent brand in my opinion, and their other regular flavors seem to be pretty okay. So let's hope they didn't screw this one up and let's give it a try. So right off the bat, this packet was actually one of the easier packets to open. Usually other packets tend to be really tight around the upper edge, and when you try and do this, you either slip on the lip over here or it just doesn't open and you end up having to tear the side. So good job. Okay, the initial whiff is a bit like cardboard, and I think this is kind of normal when it comes to meat flavored products. But the more you sniff it, the more of the potato flavors come through, and it smells a bit like barbecue sauce, barbecue chips, if that makes sense. So it looks like a regular chip, but it's a bit thicker than what you'd expect from, let's say, Calbee or other brands. I personally don't mind this sort of chip, but the downside is if you don't finish the bag immediately, it tends to get a bit chewy and difficult to bite over time. Let's give it a try. So what I'm getting from the chip is a very mild barbecue sauce flavor. It's sort of layered in the sense that it starts off with this very mild barbecue thingy thing going on. It's not very smoky in any way. I wouldn't even call it bacon. It's just barbecue. If I didn't tell you it was maple bacon thing, you probably would have thought it's just barbecue flavored chips. Then after that, what comes is the sweetness. It sort of peaks and then after it tapers off into pure salt, which is a bit odd. I'm not saying I don't really like it, but I would not call it bacon and maple syrup. I would have just called it barbecue sauce. So another thing that I'm noticing after eating a few more chips is that the seasoning is not consistent. Some chips have more flavoring, some chips have no flavoring, which is very odd. But the consistent thing among all of them is that they all have this sort of gritty, sandy, I won't say aftertaste, but it's not really aftertaste. It's sort of like a texture that remains in your mouth after you've eaten the chip. It's a bit unpleasant, but I wouldn't really consider it a deal breaker. But still, it's not something that I would say it's a positive. Other than that, I don't think there's anything else going for this particular flavor bag of chip thing. But is it worth the price? And I will say at this juncture, yes, because it's on 50% discount, and if you want to try it, then it's a steal. At the same time, you can also go get other brands for the same price, such as Calbee, which would probably offer you a more pleasant experience in terms of the overall flavor. So let's move on to the next chip. So next up, we have the fried egg flavored potato chips. It's by Kio. I'm going to assume it's pronounced Kio because it's a product of Spain. If not, it's going to be pronounced Kilo, I think, Quilo? I'm not very sure. Let me know in the comments down below how it's supposed to be pronounced, but you know what I'm talking about. But either way, fried egg flavored potato chips. Nothing overly fancy about this, no special labeling about it being gluten-free or anything of that sort. It's just potato chips that are supposedly flavored like fried egg. Yeah, so as mentioned earlier, some bags are really difficult to open from the top, and this is one of them. So yeah, we ended up having to open it from the side. Usually if I'm finishing a whole bag, I do this, but if I'm trying to reseal it, especially if it's not a great tasting bag, I'd rather not. So anyway, let's give it a try. Looks like a very thin chip, actually. I don't know if you can see, it's almost translucent. You can see all the oil bubble things from it being deep fried. It's definitely thinner than the previous one, closer to that of a Calbee. Okay, so that was actually pretty surprising. We're pretty used to eating salted egg flavored chips, and that's because salted egg yolk is the main sort of flavoring. But in this case, what you're actually tasting is I want to say actually fried egg, but not really. So let me explain. Now when it comes to a fried egg, there are two components, which is the yolk and the egg white. There is absolutely no flavor of the yolk, but what you're actually tasting is actually the flavor of the egg white that has been, well, pan fried. So if you've ever made a fried sunny side out, that sort of outer ring of the egg white that sort of crispens up, that's what you're tasting here, which is actually very surprising. That's basically it. It's not overly salty, it's not super sweet in any way, shape or form. It's just, well, what the packaging says. It's egg flavored chips, or rather it's egg white flavored chips, as strange as that sounds. But is it worth the price? And I'm gonna say no, because it's actually the most expensive bag out of the three we'll be reviewing today by quite a long shot. And I've never really found myself thinking, I want to have a bag of egg flavored chips. If I'm gonna have chips and eggs, I would rather just cook my egg and dip it in the yolk, because that's where the flavor is. The flavor isn't bad, it's just not something I would go out my way to ever try again, especially for the price. If it was maybe 1/3 the price, maybe as a fun gift for someone, but other than that, it's gonna be a no from me. And finally, we have the smallest pack, yet the most interesting looking flavor. Not beef flavored, not beef jerky flavored, not black Angus, not ribeye, but Wagyu flavored chips. I'm not entirely sure what to expect, but it sounds pretty posh. Although it says Ruffles, on the back it actually says Lay's Potato Chips Japan, so I'm going to assume they're both the same company. That being said, I'm personally not the biggest fan of crinkle cut chips because I prefer the style of the previous two chips, which, if I'm not wrong, is called a Kettle style chip. Correct me if I'm wrong. Let's give this a try. Okay, so this was pretty annoying to open because it had a really small lip on the back, but once you managed to get hold of it, the top more or less was able to split quite easily, unlike the egg flavored potato chips. So what I'm getting from the smell is sort of a ponzu flavored chip. I don't really smell too much beef, but definitely ponzu is coming through. Firstly, the smell is that of ponzu, which I'm personally a huge fan of. I think ponzu goes with a lot of meats and it's very refreshing, so that's why I like it. But when you eat the chip, it tastes of barbecue sauce. And then this sort of like spice comes through. It's not very hot, but it peaks really fast. It's not a pepper kind of heat, which is like a slow warm. I want to say like wasabi or mala, if you want to have a sort of like rough gauge. That's about it. You don't really taste beef. Like you wouldn't think it was a beef flavored chip in any way, shape or form. This particular style of flavoring doesn't work really well because as you take the second chip, you don't really get that initial hit of flavor as you did from the first chip. And it sort of like tapers off with diminishing returns. Some chips don't have much flavor, some chips are just overly salty for some reason. Like it's not a bad chip, but at the same time, it's not Wagyu flavored chips. If you want this sort of flavors, I still say go for a regular barbecue flavored chip. It's a small packet, so it didn't cost too much, but I would assume if they were to scale it up to the size of the previous two packets, it might be similarly priced to that of the egg flavored chips, which is not great. And on top of that, since I'm not a huge fan of crinkle cut chips, it kind of loses a bit of points on my scale of points, which I should probably put up somewhere. Maybe I'll put a point system here at the end of the video or something. So the thing about it is that if you like barbecue flavored chips, just buy barbecue flavored chips. The only difference it has from that is that slight spike of heat, which is not spicy enough for me to consider it spicy. So it doesn't make it qualify as a beef flavored chip, let alone a Wagyu flavored chip. It's just an amalgamation of different flavors that ends up tasting a bit like barbecue sauce. So is it worth the money? I'm gonna say probably not, because number one, there are cheaper chips out there. Number two, they are easier to find. And number three, they are more consistent. So are the chips worth the money? Probably not. They are all pretty expensive as is, and even though the crispy bacon is debatably okay because it's on 50% discount, I really wouldn't go out of my way just to try it. Overall, I'm gonna rate them just like this. It's a scoring system that I decide would be quite useful for you to understand my overall pleasure or displeasure, as well as my overall enjoyment or disappointment when trying these kind of products, so you know if it's worth your time to go through the torture or the pleasure of trying them. The scores are not scientific in any way, shape or form. It's just to give you a rough gauge of how I'm feeling while trying these particular products. But yeah, that's all for today. If you enjoyed the video or learned something new, remember to like, subscribe and to share the video. Also, feel free to follow me on my socials, they're in the description. I post there from time to time. Let me know in the comments what other snacks you enjoy or what other dishes you like to learn, what other products you'd like me to review. I know I'm supposed to try the Pizza Hut bubble tea boba pizza thing, but it's been out of stock whenever I tried to order it, and it's actually really expensive for something I'm gonna take one bite out of. So if I can find a way to just get like a singular slice, that would be pretty good. If you know how I can do that, let me know in the comments down below or send me a DM. But yeah, I think that's all for today. I'm gonna say thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.